All right. Hey, good morning, monkeys. This is going to be your sit rep. It's 11/6/2025, coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. So today we're going to be talking about the China threat. It is an area that I haven't put a lot of concentration on. All of this stuff is very slow moving, but at the end of the day, everything is absolutely heating up. And China is no different than what's going on over across the drink. But the Asian Pacific side is one that I think kind of mirrors what happened in World War II. Just the dynamics with the economic pressures, etc. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. You're going to be drinking from a fire hose. I'm going to forewarn you because I've got a lot of data I'm going to be throwing at you in a very short span, but it is important data. So let's kick back and get into the deets. Now, hey, before we get started, if you haven't done so, you're thinking about Christmas coming up, jump over to the satellite phone store. They are our sponsor for this video, sat123.com. That's sat123.com. Got a lot of cool gadgets. Telling you, this right here is an insurance policy. It's my Iridium 9555 phone. My brother has the Inmarsat, but they've got a lot of killer deals going on over there. Just go jump onto their site. Check out the stuff. Everything from bulletproof backpacks, bundles, satellite phones, obviously, to just, I mean, look at, this is one too that I really like, the Starlink Mini. This one here, if I decide, hey, you know, one day I'm just going to bug out, I'm going to go get into, go rent myself an RV and just head across the country. This right here is going to give me connectivity anywhere I go. And so it's just a lot of sound devices that you want to have in your quiver. So again, jump over there, sat123.com. That's sat123.com. Or, hey, give them a call, 941-841-0844, and tell them Monkey sent you. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to jump into what is going on in our skies. We're over here in Skyglass, and looking at the Asian Pacific first and foremost before we get over to the United States. And I will tell you some interesting things. You've got the GLEX that is up. This is a third-party company that does a lot of research, analytical data, right? So they fly over, they do intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and they're looking closely at North Korea. As you can see, this little trace line, let me just kind of zoom in a little further, back and forth, just running right along the southern border of North Korea. And then, of course, we got an R-135 that's out there doing signal intelligence. And as you'll notice, is kind of south of Taiwan. Now, when I show you what's been going on with the flights around China, you'll see why they're very concerned about stuff happening out here. And so this is, again, a watch box for us. I'll try to do a better job at gathering the Asian Pacific stuff for our sit reps going forward, because I do feel like we're now in that window where things may be perking up a bit. All right. So let's do this, though. Let's go ahead and jump over to Europe and just show you what's going on in the skies. Still very active. You'll notice the high flyers up here, and notice there are a lot of them, right? Those are Intel balloons, and you'll notice the yellow circles. So Europe is completely covered up from the intelligence perspective. And then you get down here, you've got an R-135, looks to be coming out of Constanta, and a little Brio 66. So again, intelligence around Greece, etc. All right, now I'll take us over here to the U.S. And you'll notice it's a little light in terms of the Intel balloons that are currently up, very southeast focused. You've got one that's actually parked over the Gulf of America, which is a little concerning. So probably looking at ship traffic, et cetera, that's out there. Now, I'm also going to tell you, we will be looking at the marine traffic when it comes to the coast of China. I've got some very interesting data for you there as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start kind of peeling this banana back. First and foremost, I'm going to show you what's going on with China. Notice a lot of flights last 30 days in and out of Beijing, and then down to their military installation locations. Very heavily fortified on the coastal areas towards Japan, towards Taiwan. And then you'll notice too this right here. This is an area that if you look at the incursions, and we're going to look at the data for the incursions, it gives you a little bit of history behind what's been going on there, but very heavy in terms of traffic. So with that said, let me do this. I'm going to come back to this video here, and I do apologize for that. I'm going to get into this piece, and then when we get over to the news cycle, I'm going to show you, we're going to talk a little bit about the UPS piece as well. Just a horrible tragedy. All right. So Taiwan, right? Why is this such an important location for China, right? Strategically, okay, it sits at the center of what they call the first island chain, right? It's a string of U.S. aligned islands, right? Japan, Taiwan, Philippines that contain China's navy, right? So if you have those currently situated the way they are, China doesn't have a lot of moving freedom, so to speak, right? Because the way these are set up, if they go south, they've got the Philippines to contend with and the U.S., all right? Japan heavily with the U.S. as well as Japan. And so all of these navies and air forces that are in those regions kind of box them in. So if they control Taiwan, it can break out into the Pacific very easily without having to pass any of these locations. It threatens U.S. bases in Guam as well as Japan. And then it dominates sea lanes, right, that carry 40% of global trade because of the way the situation is. And I'm going to show you what's going on with all of the shipping stuff currently. That's a big deal for them, right? It's their economy. So it's almost similar to when you look at like the Suez Canal or areas around Istanbul or even the Panama Canal. If you restrict the flow of supply through those shipping lanes, you shut down most of the stuff going around the world. And so it would also give China deep water ports and missile reach across the Western Pacific. So think of Taiwan as an unsinkable aircraft carrier that keeps China boxed in, okay? Now, we talked about the incursions, and let me just kind of show you from an airspace and maritime incursion aspect, right? So China's had 370 Chinese military aircraft crossing into Taiwan's median line in 2024. That's up 1,700 plus from 2023. Then you've had 2,000 aircraft entering Taiwan's airspace, right? That was up to September 2024. It's a record high. And then the peak month, July 2024, 507 sorties just in a single month. 111 aircraft plus 46 naval vessels encircled Taiwan in a major PLA exercise. That was in May of 2024. And then Chinese naval activity now routinely includes joint blockade simulations, right, and amphibious assault drills. So they are very much posturing. The median line crossing, once rare, are now almost daily occurrences. Now, take a look at this from a cyber perspective. We always hear about this, but Taiwan's government networks face 2.4 million cyber attack attempts a day. That's a double rate from 2023. So year over year, 2x, right? 906 major cyber incidents logged just in 2024 alone. That's up 20% from 2023. And 2.15 million disinformation incidents tracked in 2024, nearly double as well. And then the attacks focus on energy grids, defense networks, and electronic infrastructure. And don't think for a minute that's not trying to happen here in the United States. The troll army operations, they use AI-generated fake news and social media bots to sow division. So, talk about the imbalance, right? Military imbalance in the Taiwan Strait. So you can see the blue is going to be Taiwan. The red is China. So they are way overpowered when it comes to the Chinese military, from ground forces all the way to the Navy and the Air Force. Air Force, actually, Taiwan's pretty impressive when you look at it from an island size. Transport aircraft is actually, Taiwan's got them beat on that, but that really doesn't matter unless you're trying to get people out and off the island during an incursion. So now you also talk about the spend, right? Global military spending. Now, the U.S. is way at the top of this. We are spending more money right now militarily than historically than ever. That also was happening during the Biden regime. So don't lose sight of that. All right. But now it's going super high. But look at China, number 2. Even though they haven't matched us, they are still very high. Russia is a number 3. And combine the two of them, that's a big force to be dealing with, right? So let's take us back over here. We're going to come back to all of that here in just a minute. Now, again, we looked at all the incursions happening down on the southern end of Taiwan. Now, take a look at the intel and surveillance. Now, I will tell you, over the United States, the ISR aspect from LaSalle Aviation is very light over a 3-day period. The usual spots over Europe, but then notice they are looking very closely at Libya and very closely over Gaza, etc. Right? And then notice again what we just showed you, same thing, looking at North Korea, but then just following the Chinese coastline coming out of Malaysia, headed up to that area. Notice that this one actually lands in China. Well, I did a little research on that, and that's actually the Malaysian intelligence flight that actually flew from their country into China, which is kind of interesting. All right, so it's not a LaSalle Aviation U.S. stuff, but you'll notice they're just kind of going back and forth in the region, pretty active from an intel perspective. And then we take a look at the drones, and you'll notice some back and forth here up into Michigan. A very, from a northern border focus, absolutely seeing a trend there in the United States, looking into Canada. And then over the Middle East, the usual spots. And you'll see two pretty hot and heavy off of the shoreline or the coastline of Japan, coming out of Okinawa and then looking into China down south, again, around the area where all of the incursions have been taking place. All right, back over here. Now, if we talk about the United States, what is currently up, we're sitting around 200 aircraft up, but keep in mind, I've stripped out more than that in terms of trainers. That's going to be our highest number. You'll see those up here in red. And then outside of that, you've got H-60s, a little sprinkle, not a lot, only 21 up currently right now. You look at air refuelers, and if I can get these numbers to cooperate, we've got about 16 KC-135s currently up, and that would not be the right ones. That's 767-300 ER. And so, pretty low number. Let's just go with the 135s. You can see what is currently up, 16 of those. Very low number of the 67200s, clearly, because I don't see them on this side of the ticket here. So, okay, I do see a U2 that is currently up. More than likely, this is, let me get it pulled back and take us to where they're headed. Oh, I did not expect to see this here. So US U2 doesn't give me an altitude. You can see the trace line, and that seems to be coming from Europe. All right. Very interesting. All right. Coming out of the UK, headed back, and it is currently over Greenland. Actually, looks like it's popped in for a fuel stop here in Greenland. I'm sure they're loving that. Right. Don't see those up too often. That right there would be a Dragon Lady, and that is why, when you see it coming out of Europe like that, that tells you we were actually using a U-2 spy plane over Europe, probably looking at Russia, etc. All right. Now, let's get into the news and what's going on out there. Starting off in the Oval Office, it looks like today Trump is actually participating in a multilateral Central Asian. It looks like it's a 6 p.m., so that's this evening, probably a little bit of a dinner party. 7 p.m. Would be the dinner aspect of it. So, dine and dash, I guess is what you would say. All right, let's move on from that aspect. Now, let's get into this, what happened with the UPS plane. Now that number is up to, it started out at 3, it's up to 12. And actually, a child was actually involved in this as well, which is horrible. But fatalities now at 12, one of whom was a young child. And they expect the number to increase. So they're still looking for bodies and people that are probably pinned into this. And, when you look at the video here, which is pretty bad, you'll see that it is absolutely horrific in terms of a fireball. And so that makes it even more difficult when looking at this stuff. So let's get into that real fast. Okay, so this video surfaced out there on X, and I will tell you, I turned the sound down on it because the guy is actually pretty colorful in his words. Rightly so, you're witnessing something that is absolutely crazy to see. But think about this. When you see it going down the runway, you'll notice the number one engine is actually on fire. Now, why do they keep going? You have to understand this is an MD-11. It's got 3 engines. So the left engine, number one, is on fire. More than likely, there's a fuel line rupture involved in this because it is a continuing to provide fuel for the fire as this thing goes down the runway. Now, the difference when you start talking about the MD-11, when you get to V1 and V2, and those are basically commit ratings, right? So based on speed as you're heading down the runway, the difference between V1 and V2 is a matter of seconds. Okay. When you get to V2, you're committed, meaning even if you slam on the brakes, thrust reversers, flaps, everything you got to try to stop that aircraft, you're going off the runway. So you have to commit. And in a lot of cases, an aircraft like this would basically climb out. They would probably try to do their best to get that fire out through the extinguisher bottles that are on the engines. I'm sure they did that, but it probably did absolutely nothing because you had fuel line that was probably, feeding that fire. And so, as you can see, no altitude gain at all. They probably were less than 50 feet as they just went straight into all of the buildings in the industrial park. So, again, horrible, horrible situation. So, all right, let's move on to our main stuff here again. But that is the latest 12 killed so far. And that number's going, they expect to go up. All right. Supply chain crisis brewing as shipments out of China dwindle. Shipping imports are down over a third just to the port of LA. Now, you do see a little bit of a bump up because of Christmas when that happens. But I'm going to show you when you start to look at what is actually happening off on the shoreline here from a Shanghai perspective. Now, green, again, this is going to be naval asset, or not naval, ships, okay, vessels. Not military. No, this is just cargo. Green is going to be cargo. Red are going to be oil. You'll notice that there are a lot more green than there are red when it comes to this, but all of the grays are unspecified. Most of these are going to be cargo ships that are parked. All right. So if you start to kind of separate this, and let me go down, I'm going to take out these two, and we're just going to focus in on, well, that didn't really want to, we may have to just kind of go in with the cargo vessels unspecified. All right. Look as I drill in at the parked ships. So what happens is there's not enough space for them inside the ports. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that things are slowing down a lot too. Okay. But these are parked ships, right? They're moored off the shore of China. And as you go in deeper, you can see these are thousands and thousands of cargo ships that are parked. You go a little bit further north and look at this. I mean, it is an insane number of ships that are parked out here, right? Think of it like just ghost ships, okay? Get up here, as you can see, kind of drilling in more and more, right? I don't think we've ever experienced this many in watching this over time. I mean, just continues to go up. I mean, look at this. Get into the Yellow Sea. Look at the ships that are just parked, right? Look at this, right? Absolutely insane amount of ships that are not being used. You get in here and it just continues to go. Look at that. I mean, this is an incredible number of ships that are not moving. That tells you that the Chinese economy is in a very bad state because they are all about pushing out products, right? And if these ships are parked, that means they're not pushing out products. Why is this dangerous? Because, you start to think about an injured animal when it is cornered, right? That is when it is at its most dangerous, right? Because, when China's economy starts to waffle and teeter like you see in here, they've got to, I mean, you always look at, and I've always said this, war is an economy. They've got to start looking at other ways to keep their economy afloat. And again, this is like cornering a wounded animal. It's very, very dangerous. And they are obviously some bad things are on the horizon for them economically. Right? Now, let's go back over and talk about basically their economy and rare earth materials, okay? Because this is where you start to look at why they have a lot of the market cornered militarily, right? They may be a smaller military, but the United States is dependent on these rare earth minerals. And when China starts to kind of pull back and not allow people to buy things like tungsten, things that we need to make weaponry, that's a big deal. Now, the 270,000 right there, as you see on the China flag over the map here, that's just metric tons of how much they produce over time. Now, this is just a span. I think it's a 30-year span. But notice the U.S. is right there below it. That number is dwindling for the United States. That's why you see the U2s and stuff looking across the United States areas. There's out east of California because they are trying to find rare earth minerals. It's why I talked about Nigeria being a critical area for the United States in terms of mining operations. That entire belt that runs across Africa, Sudan, Mali, all of it has a ton of rare earth materials. If China gets in there, God help us, all right? Because it's going to be very, very bad for everyone because they will then control a lion's share of that material. Now, also, take a look at the GDP from a China perspective. Now, it says their growth is plateaued. You'll notice big spikes. This thing almost looks like an EKG. Around COVID, you'll see it's dropped way, way, way down low right here, right? But then after that, and my hand can only go so far before my camera loses it, the very top, you see a rebound spike, right? Or as I always say, a dead cat bounce. So, but you'll notice right here at the very end, closest to me, it is starting to go down again. Even though it looks like they're doing great, 4.8% GDP, that's not too bad. But you got to look at the leading indicators. And when you start to see the amount of ships out here parked, that tells you that there is some very big woes on the near horizon for China. Okay, now let's go on over here to this part, right? U.S. bombers join air drills with South Korea and Japan. You'll see we got some B-1s in the area. That is probably also making China very nervous, as well as North Korea. I wouldn't pull them off the table. Now, you may remember Trump just came back from South Korea where he was given a crown. I thought that was kind of strange. But the interesting thing to this is that he was talking about him meeting with Kim Jong-un, right? Little rocket man. And it didn't happen. But nobody really spoke about it. Like, why did it not happen? So that goes to tell you the strain between the U.S. and North Korea now is probably at an all-time high. So we'll keep eyes on that. But this right here is certainly going to make North Korea a little bit nervous. And again, the dangerous part with North Korea is you've got a small country that has a dictator that has nuclear weapons. So, this is like something out of a James Bond movie, right? So it has the potential to go hot very quickly, all right? Okay, now here's another one over off of the Defense Blog News. You'll see Chinese signals collection ship. Now, when I say signals, that's the same thing, just like our R-135 signal intelligence. They're spotted off the coast of Japan. This is the ship that they're talking about. And this was the route, just kind of went around Japan and back down. I do not speak this, so I have no idea what it actually says. But this is basically just kind of walking you through how they continuously go around and do the data collection. So they're listening in, they're grabbing things. So when you've got the B-1s doing things around there, you land any type of aircraft, R-135s, whatever may be happening with our military, China's listening. Now, remember too that China, from a signal intelligence perspective, has just built a new system just right near Havana. So they're listening into the United States, gathering intelligence as well. And that's kind of dangerous because you've got Trump right there in Mar-a-Lago. So, okay, continuing on. China stuns the market with a $10,000 long-range strike drone. One in the image looks very much like some of the others that we have seen over there. It's not uncommon for China. They like to steal people's secrets, and this one was probably handed to them because it's not ours. But this is what you're seeing from the Russian perspective, and it's got the little winglets on here. But all this is, think of it like a cruise missile with bigger wings, really. And it is made for dropping ordnance on stuff. Straight up, you don't get them back. They're not recovered, so much like a cruise missile. But this becomes a very big thing to keep your eye on, because the fact that it is only $10,000 a copy, and China has the ability to mass produce things in rapid fashion, okay, this becomes something we need to keep our eyes on, because now all of a sudden they could be feeding Russia, they could be feeding Iran, they can feed themselves. $10,000 a copy is significantly less than these multi-million-dollar Tomahawks and things like that, okay? So pay attention to that. That's going to be a very important one in the future. All right. And then China introduces new export control over, precious metals, right? This rare earth minerals that we've been talking about. Again, now they just leverage new exports. Think about that. Why is that important? Because Trump just came back talking about how great this meeting was, and then they turned right around and dropped the hammer on this export of rare earth minerals, meaning they're going to be using it for themselves. They're not going to be selling it to other places like the United States. And this one here talks just about there are over 70,000 tons of radioactive thorium stored in the area. This has become a large issue recently because the tailing pond lacks proper lining. So they're getting leakage here. So it's kind of dangerous for them. But this right here, China's exports of tungsten, excluding cemented carbide tools and tungsten halogen lamps, totaled 12,000 tons from January to September of this year. Man, you're talking headlights, you're talking all kinds of stuff. And again, they are 80% of the global tungsten supply was where they stacked up in 2023. So we use that for a lot of different elements here in the United States. Things like from a military use, right? Kinetic penetrators, armor-piercing cores. This is just strictly tungsten stuff, right? Submunitions, anti-armor items, small and medium caliber AP rounds, right? That's armor-piercing rounds. And then armor inserts and counter-penetration materials. And then it supports other systems like counterweights and balances, radiation shielding, tooling and manufacturing. It's in all kinds of stuff. Golf clubs. But that's not militarily, unless you think about, the upper chain out playing golf. But why? And it has some big advantages. It's very high in density, right? It gives penetrators extreme kinetic energy concentration. And then it's exceptional hardness and wear resistance, right? And it has a high melting point and thermal stability. And it's a non-radioactive alternative to depleted uranium, which we also use a lot of our military stuff. So just kind of give you a back in the napkin of why that is important. And when they start to put the squeeze on people with it, then, it does impact our military operations. Because then we got to go elsewhere to find it. Right? Okay, drone strikes. We're going to transition over. We talked about drones from a China perspective. But we're going to transition over to Russia just for a hot minute. Now, I will tell you, in the Monkey Minute this weekend on Patreon, I will be talking about a lot of the stuff going on from a Russia perspective militarily, as well as Iran, the Middle East, etc. So drone strikes at oil stations in Russia. And this, again, I said if there's one thing that's going to make this whole war go highly kinetic very quickly, it's us continuing to take out their natural gas and oil infrastructures, because that is where they make all their money. Just like China, right? When you start to see their supply chain slow down significantly, right? That means their manufacturing is slowing down. Everything is slowing down. This is Russia's biggest export. And it's like, you're cornering a rabid dog, and it's not going to be pretty. Right. And then Russia deploys the Panzer air defense system and this Buk system to Venezuela. Now, I'm just dovetailing on some of the stuff when it comes to Venezuela. We just talked about the fact that that area, we just had an IL-76 aircraft that flew in. It went to Nicaragua, and it also went up to Havana, Cuba. But it landed in Venezuela, and we were all kind of speculating on what was on board there. And then this right here just basically flushes it out for us. IL-76 aircraft delivered Russian-made air defense systems amid reports. So this is what it was, okay? Very dangerous for our military, especially if you've got SF guys on Little Birds and H-60s in the area, because they don't really have a big, or a defense system that allows them to really get away from that. They have flares, et cetera, but it is not as maneuverable and high speed as something like a fighter aircraft, right? So again, eyes on that. And then we talk a little bit, and I'm going to bounce across a couple different environments. This is the latest from the Asian Pacific around Taiwan. Now, this is the area where we see a lot of the incursions happening down here, but you can see all of the other things happening with Chinese bombers, helicopters and stuff. We've got vessels. This will be the Chinese part, Coast Guard fleet, intercepting and restricting Taiwan waters. And then you've got actually the British Navy that's out here operating too. So pay attention to that. Again, we do have some ongoing operations up here in Japan happening, but this is the area we're paying attention to. All right, so we go bounce, and I know I'm bouncing around on you, and I do apologize because I didn't realize I had it sitting on that when I selected it. And you just can't just show it and not talk to it, right? So, but here's the latest when it comes to Ukraine. We talk about the fact that Ukraine keeps popping things off, hitting oil refineries, et cetera. This was the latest one, but they have been hitting way deep. Here's another one right here. So you can see that's a power station. Now, mind you, these are using drones that don't have a lot of boom to them. You throw in the Tomahawk missile and they start doing this, and those locations quickly go offline. It's a big, big impact. All right, here's the latest from a Taiwan perspective. You can see just all of the boxes around the island. I mean, just completely chalked up. This is Okinawa. You get around here. This is for unmanned aircraft, right? Scheduled, all of this. So the area has just got a ton of NOTAMs and TFRs. Look at South Korea all the way around it. Japan, no difference with the danger boxes. Okay. And you get over here to Europe, just completely covered up. Absolutely insane, the amount of stuff going on around the world right now. Right. And I am going to just talk to this again on the Monkey Minute. We'll talk more about it right now, and actually happening as we speak. Israel is hitting, the IDF is hitting a bunch of Hezbollah targets right here on the southern end of Lebanon. So, and of course, they still continue. Notice that they're hitting in the areas. Remember, there was a phased approach, and they're not hitting inside this area that's already pretty much leveled, but they're hitting outside of it as this starts to squeeze out. Once they get all the way out, they probably will stop. Well, we hope that they stop. So, all right. This is one I think is also important because China's new tailless stealth fighters both appear at secretive test bases. You can see kind of cool looking. The U.S. has got stuff like that. I think Russia's even working on these same kind of things. But it's just another data point for you. We talk about these drones. You start talking about these aircraft that don't have this type, which means they're heavily reliant on thrust vectoring, right? That's where those, like the F-22, where your thrust can actually steer the aircraft, right? So a pretty cool looking jet. Now, I will tell you, even though they're pretty spiffy on the electronic side of the house, most of their stuff is not really super well built. But this is the J36, and it is in their area, which is similar to our Area 51, right? Okay. All right. Now, I apologize. I did bounce around. I thought I had all of my China stuff pulled up further to the front. Evidently, I did not. But nonetheless, we have just gone through the old fire hose when it comes to what's going on relative to China and Taiwan. You can see why it's such a critical area for China, because right now, if they try to deploy all of their military out to the Pacific and across, they've got to go through our pinch points, which are going to be, Taiwan, which is a big, big strategic location, Japan, Okinawa, and then down to the Philippines. So the U.S. has a ton of assets in that region. And, when you start to look at the stack ups that have been happening over the last 30 days from the U.S., it does start to paint the picture that things are starting to ratchet up a bit. I do find it always interesting that Trump goes to these meetings, same thing with Putin, comes back, talks about how great it went, and then we see these huge swings with sanctions and all of these export stuff that just gets totally truncated, and it goes the other direction. And I just don't understand how you can think things go so well in one direction, but then they actually come back at you from another one. So kind of crazy, man, the geopolitics of it. So, all right, folks, that's it. We will see you over on the weekend on Patreon. Everybody else will see you on Tuesday next week. You guys be safe out there. God bless. Monkey out.